And as we move forward and as we start to talk more and more about this process, we're going to discover that there's really two of these value drivers that play the biggest role in creating new value for the firm. And that is return and growth. And return has a very easy and clean interpretation, right? Again, if return goes up, value goes up. So across the board, that's a good thing for us. Growth, though, has a more nuanced interpretation. Growth is only going to create value if growing the cash flows, meaning taking new projects, new investments, if these new projects have a higher return than cost, right? So, in other words, growth only creates value if we take good projects. If we take bad projects that have a higher cost of capital than the return that they generate, then we're just destroying value. Right? And so we can see that play out in what we call the growth value matrix. Right? Now this is a matrix. You can see it down here. It's got growth on the left-hand side. It's got return on invested capital up top. And if the spread between return and the weighted average cost of capital is positive, then growth creates value. And hopefully that's pretty straightforward. If the project is a good project, if it has a higher return than cost, then taking the project is good for us. But if the return is lower than the cost of capital, then taking the project actually destroys value for the firm. And with this implementation of the model, we can see that very clearly. So let's assume that we've got our project, our company. They got a starting profit of 100 million. They got a 10% WACC. So this is the firm that we've been looking at, A or B. You can see that right here down the line, the circled line in the matrix, if they have a 10% return and a 10% cost of capital, then their value will always be $1 billion. And no matter the growth, the value will be $1 billion. Right? Because the return of every project that we take, no matter how much we grow and how many new projects we take, is exactly equal to the cost of taking that project. So taking more projects doesn't create any additional value. It doesn't destroy value, it just doesn't do anything. We're like a hamster spinning the wheel. On the other hand, if the return is lower than 10%, so say 7.5%, then taking new projects actually destroys value. So look at the value of the firm as we move from, say, 2% growth to 6% growth. Growing at 6% when we're taking value-destroying projects the whole time means that we lose up to half of the value of the firm. Right? The flip side, of course, is that anytime we take a new project when it is a value-creating project and return is higher than the WACC, then we create value. So growth, when the ROIC is higher than the weighted average cost of capital, creates value. And you can see that both in the 12.5% return category and the 15% return category. Now, these relationships are not fixed. In other words, there is some nuance here, and we can see the nuance in the following slides. Right? So here's a cool example that I think really drives home the interplay between return and growth. Okay? So we got two Fortune 500 companies in 1995. Right? Both companies in 1995 had the same revenue, $20 billion. Since then, though, one company, the red company, the company with the red bars, they have had huge growth in revenue. Right? So they've gone from 20 billion in revenue to 70 billion in revenue in like 2010. And the company in blue, the blue bars, has actually kept revenue pretty steady. They've grown from 20 to only 30 billion in revenue. Right? Now look at the characteristics of the two firms over here on the right. Company A, so one of these two companies, they have a market cap of 170 billion and an enterprise value of almost 200 billion. So that's what the company is worth. That's enterprise value. And their return is 20%. Right? So any investment they make is going to bring in 20% to the firm. Company B, on the other hand, so one of the companies there, either red or blue, they've got an enterprise value of almost 60 billion, so a third of company A, and their return is 12%. Right? So again, almost half of company A. Anytime they take a new project, they only make half of what company A is. Now, the question that I want you to think about, pause the lecture, ask yourself this question before you hear the answer. Which one is which? Is company A the red or the blue? Well, when I ask this question in person, almost everyone tells me that company A should be the red. Now, these two companies are Coca-Cola and Costco, and in fact, it's opposite. Company A is the blue company, and it is Coca-Cola. Company B is the red company, and it is Costco. Now, these are two market-leading companies. They are excellently run. They are well known for being efficient and good operating companies. In fact, Costco is one of the best performing grocery stores over the last 30, 40 years. Why is it the case that Costco more than tripled its revenue, Coke only increased revenue by, say, 50%, and yet Coca-Cola is worth 3 times what Costco is? The answer is that Coca-Cola has a much higher return on their new investments. Costco has a really low return relative to that. So they keep growing revenue, they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but because the new revenue doesn't bring in additional free cash flow via return, the company's value doesn't increase at the same rate. And this isn't to say that company B, that Costco is a bad company. They're not. They're actually, again, one of the best run grocery stores. It's just that grocery stores have a really low margin, right? So grocery stores can't charge that high a markup on food. And actually the return here for Costco is really high for their fellow grocery stores. Other grocery stores have margins and returns in, under 10%, 4, 5, 6%. So Costco does make a really good return for the business that they're in, but they can't compete with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola sells an addicting product, and like most addicting products, you can charge a high markup and people will still buy it. And Coca-Cola has an incredibly strong brand, maybe the strongest brand of any company out there. And because of that, it means that even though other sodas might be similar, taste similar, have similar attributes, people buy Coca-Cola because that's what they like. And they swear that they can taste the difference between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, even though blind taste tests across the world have shown that that's unlikely to be the case, right? So strong brand, high returns, that creates value. And it's not necessarily the case that high growth creates value. Now, let me show you what that looks like in our matrix, okay? So here's the matrix, and now we're gonna put ourselves in the shoes of an advisor, a consultant working for McKinsey that gets hired by a company like Costco. And here's 2 different scenarios. So let's say Costco has a 15% return on invested capital. They got a 10% WACC, but right now they're only growing at 2%. So their growth rate in projects is 2%. The new CEO has hired us, and he's arguing that the company should grow faster. If they increase G, they'll have an increased value, even if it means sacrificing return. So even if increasing G means a decrease in return, we take some projects that aren't as good, that will still create value. And we are the McKinsey consultants, and we lay out this growth and return value matrix. And actually, we show that that's likely to be the case, at least in moderation. Right? So if you look at the 15% return and 2% growth cell, it says that the value of the firm should be $1,083,000,000. And the CEO is arguing that if we increase growth but decrease return, so let's go to the 4% growth cell and the 12.5% return cell, that's going to increase value. And actually, we see that it does. Right? We go from $1,083,000,000 to 1.1 billion. So we generate pretty sizable 50, 60 million in value. But if we do that again, if we go to 6% growth but drop down to 10% return, we decrease value, right? We drop back down to $1 billion. So our advice to the CEO would be, yes, that's true. You can grow a little bit better, grow a little bit faster, and sacrifice some return, take some lower generating projects, but only to a certain extent. Otherwise, you start to generate, we start to decrease value. Now, the flip side, assume that we got a company that earns 10% return, so return is the same as WACC, so we're not doing anything, but we're growing at 6%. We're taking all these projects, high, low return, But because the projects on average have the same cost of capital as they do return, we're actually not doing anything for our value. So the CEO is saying, listen, if we can increase the return that we get from our projects, even if we take less of them, we're going to generate value. And so we're the consultants, and we whip up this matrix for them, and we show exactly that that's the case and that there is no moderation here. An increase in return will always generate more value, even if it means a decrease in growth. Okay? So at every cell, they're in 12.5% return and 15.5% return. It is a higher value than in the 10% return category. Right? So this is the way that we use value. This is the way that we have to think about value. We're going to use this model as a way to just provide a framework to talk about any firm decision making, to judge the management. We'll say, okay, any decision you make, if it's not focused on value through one of these 4 categories, we don't think it's likely to be effective. And in fact, it might be value destroying depending on where they take you. Okay, so that's all we have for this lecture. We will, in the following lectures, we will talk more about the 2 main sources of value, return and growth. And we'll spend some significant time talking about all the ways that a firm can use growth and return to generate value. So all the strategies that generate value through growth and return, all the different moves, what's successful, what's not successful. And then after that, we will start to work a model, and we'll do it all together. We'll work a full real model with real data for Home Depot, and we'll do one for FedEx, and we'll start to look and see how these models and the discounted cash flow valuation actually plays out. Okay, see you next time.